Okay, so now that our application is built, at least the front end, the prototype version that is, I want to go ahead and implement some integration testing. And we've been doing unit testing with Jest up until now. And now I'm going to introduce Cypress to do some automated integration tests. Now, these tests will have to be updated as we move through the back end, but for now, this will be good enough. So recall that we are running inside of Docker. And so I have already brought down my containers with Docker compose down. And I also removed the image that was there already. So you can see if I say Docker images grep Fullstack reduce, there's nothing there. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is add a new dev dependency of Cypress. And this sometimes takes a little while to install. So be patient if it does. And now I need to rebuild my Docker container again. So I'm going to say Docker, I'm going to back up a folder. Actually, I guess I don't have to. I'll just say Docker compose up. And I want it with the daemon. So it's going to go ahead now and rebuild my container completely. This is going to take a couple of minutes. So I'm going to pause the video and resume when it's finished. Okay, so as you can see, this took about 2.5 minutes here. And now we have our to-do application. I don't remember which command I used. I used up, which means it should be running now. So if I look at it, Docker compose logs end. So it is running. And if I run my netstat command, I can see it's running on 3000. So our application is back up and running. And now we need to integrate Cypress. So in my package JSON here, I'm going to create a new script for testing with Cypress. I'm going to call this test Cypress. Maybe I'll just call it Cypress. And this is going to call into this node modules.bin Cypress. This is the thing that I want to run. So I'm going to say /node modules.bin Cypress, and I'm just going to call open on that. All right. So adding this script allows me to simply say yarn Cypress now, and it will launch my new Cypress. Now, the first time you do this, it may require you to reboot your computer. Sometimes Chrome will not respond. And for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, no, thank you, delete all the examples. Yes, delete the files. And now I'm going to create a new spec file. And I'm going to call this one, I'll just call this todos.spec.js. Not the best name in the world, but now I'm going to go ahead and try to run this. And it looks like I do not have to reboot. If you get errors here, Chrome can't connect, whatever, reboot your computer. Okay, so now we have this lovely interface here. Chrome is being controlled by automated test software. If you look at the Cypress documentation, you can find ways to run it with different browsers. You can run it with a headless browser, but right now I'm just going to use Chrome. So no tests found, and that's because we haven't written any yet. So if we go and look in here, that file was created in here. Okay, now the tests here are very similar to the ones in Jest. However, this one uses a different set of libraries called Mocha and chai, C-H-A-I. It can be configured to use Jest's expectations, but everything looks pretty much the same. And if you're familiar at all with Jest, you'll be comfortable here very quickly. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do something very similar to what we did in Jest. I'm going to say describe to do application. It's a callback, just like in Jest. And here, I'm just going to make a bunch of tests that I'm eventually going to want to use. So I'm going to say it shows an empty list and no to-dos. And you remember how in Jest we had the dot to do here, and it would nicely show us. This is not a thing in Cypress. And if we go and look at this, we have all kinds of problems. It dot to do is not a function. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pre-write it like this and comment it out. So what else do we need to test for? It adds a to-do. I want to check that it does not add a blank to-do. Basically, I'm kind of redoing the stuff we did in Jest. The difference is that this time it's going to happen based on a user's actual experience in the browser versus our just mounting the code locally. Let's say, what else does it do? It deletes a to-do. And it marks to-dos, marks an incomplete to-do as complete. And it also goes the other way. It marks a complete to-do as incomplete, right? And I think that's about it, right? That's pretty much it. Okay, so starting at the top, the very first thing, so it shows an empty list. And here I'm going to give it the callback. And if we don't throw an error, the test will pass. So if I come over here and then look at my tests, okay, so it did pass, but it gave us this little warning, no commands were issued. So the first thing we want to do, there is a global named Cy, which I guess stands for Cypress. And the first thing we're going to do as a user is visit the site, right? So the site is running at HTTP localhost 3000. Okay, and what you'll see is when this test runs, it actually loads up our site and we can see things here. We can take screenshots of this. We can take videos of this. We can compare it to images that we're supposed to have. Ours is going to be very simple here. Basically, we're just going to make sure that it actually adds, it shows this empty list. So right now it says no to-dos left. And that's what we want to see. So I visited the site, and now I'm going to use a method. It's sort of like JavaScript's DOM manipulation stuff, like query selector, but this is Cy.get. So this takes in any kind of CSS selector. And if the item is not here, it will throw an error. So if I do this, this should fail the test. Okay, and we can see here, we expected to find this element, but never found it. Okay, here, I'm just going to expect to find my empty list. My item, this is my element with a class of empty list, right? So this is showing that it passed. So that's that, very simple, right? Let's check how we can add a to-do. So here again, we have to visit the URL. So Cy.visit http://localhost 3000. And we have a callback. I'm sorry, no callback here. We're already in the callback. Okay, so it adds a to-do. And it's going to pass the test because we didn't fail the test. These will pass by default unless you throw an error or you make an assertion that fails. So what do we want to do? We need to create a task. Then we need to enter the task in the input. Then we need to submit the form. Then we need to verify that the list has the new task, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and create a task. I'm going to say const random task equals, I'm just going to make this horribly ugly task, math.random. But this one is guaranteed that we can't fake it, right? Okay, so now we got to get our hands on the input. Well, if we go back and look, we know there's only one input on the screen here. So I can use my CSS selector, side.get input, and I'm going to actually name this the input. So this is a const input equals this. And now I want to type into it. So I'm going to say input.type. And I'm just going to type in random task, which is a string. And if we go ahead and look at this now, we can see it actually interacts here, right? It just typed it right in there. So now I want to submit the form. And there are two ways we can do this. Either I can type enter in this input, or I can grab the button and click on it. And I think that's what I'm going to do. So just like the input, there's only one button. So I'm going to say const button equals side.get button and button.click. Okay. And here's our thing, right? Now we have to assert that it's actually there. So I'm going to say now const list equals side.get dot to do list. And this is one of the reasons why I like to put my class names on, like my component names on the class as class names. It just makes this testing so much easier. And here I want to assert that list.contains, and I'm going to put something I know is not there because I want this test to fail when it fails, right? And there it goes, timed out trying to find this content. But what it's really going to contain is the random task. So random task. And this should pass. And there it goes. Okay. So now we know that we can add a to-do. Now we need to make sure that we don't add a blank to-do. And the first thing we have to do here, again, is visit the URL. Problem is, this is starting to get old now. I'm getting sick of typing this, and we should really put this in a variable of some kind. I'm just going to call this URL, and I'm going to put this all the way up here. I'm going to say const URL equals this. And while I've got this thing, I'm going to cut it, place it here, and paste. All right. And this should still work. Okay, good. Remember, this test does not fail because we didn't actually fail it yet. So I can use these same things right here. Notice there's a lot of repetition here. It's not necessarily a bad thing. We can come back and refactor our tests later. But what I want to assert now is that empty list is still there, because empty list should not be there after we've added it up, right? And this ran quickly enough that it didn't go. And actually, that's another test we can run here, is we can make sure that when we add it to do this, there is no empty list there. So here I could do this. We could say dot should not exist. Okay, so that still works. That's good. Okay, now we can edit it to do, right? So in editing it to do, first we have to add one, and then we have to modify it, right? So I'm going to take the code from adding it to do. I'm going to copy it all. And now I'm just going to knock out some of these comments so that this doesn't take up so much space. And I'm going to let it continue to verify that it's really there. Now we have to find, so this time we have to find the edit button. We have to click it. Then we have to find the edit form and modify it, or rather delete the existing task, new task, or modify the task rather. Yeah, from these two, that's fine. I'm just going to say modify the task and submit the form. Now we need to assert the new task or the modified task. Right. So if we go look at our thing, we have the edit button here, and it's actually, I think, named btn edit, if I'm not mistaken. So we can do that. Let's say const btn edit equals side.get .btn edit, and then btn edit .click. Right? If that works, we should be looking at the edit form now. And we are. You'll notice that this is now the cancel form. Right? Okay. So now we need to get the other input. And there are there are now two buttons and two inputs on the page. There might be 3 buttons on the page. So const edit input is going to equal side.get, and here we have to be a little bit more specific. You'll recall that this whole class, this whole thing is named to do. So I can just go in there and get it. I can say, give me the input inside the to-do item. Okay. Now I want to say, now I have a problem, because if I just start typing in here, if I just say edit input dot type, let's say hello, this is not going to replace what's already there. What this does is add on to what was there before. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little bit small. Let me see if I can magnify this. No, it doesn't help. Okay, but basically it's appending to the end. So the first thing I need to do is delete the stuff that was in there before. Now Cypress gives me a way to type a backspace here and other special characters like enter or whatever. I can just type backspace and it will delete a character. So what I'm actually going to do though is I need to do this in a loop. And I know how many there are because I know what was in there before. Random task was in there. So here I'm going to basically make a loop where I'm going to say random task dot split. So we just want to split the whole thing. Dot for each character, and I don't really care what it is. I'm going to then do this. And that should delete everything in there. Yep, there it goes. Now we can type whatever it is we're going to type. So we're going to need a new task. So I'm going to say const new task or a modified task equals, I'm going to do the same exact thing, string math.random, right? Then we have to submit the form, and I can use the same trick here. Notice that this form doesn't have a submit button, so we have to hit enter now. So edit input dot type enter. Okay, and then we're just going to take this again, and we're going to say list dot contains random task. Now I'm going to do that because I want this test to fail the first time. It should not contain that anymore. This should be a failed test. Okay. What happened here? This is not the failure I was expecting. Maybe I have to just get it again. Just get it one more time after the final submission. And since I'm doing that, I can't use a const here anymore. This has to become a let or a var. We'll use a let here. There we go. This is the error I was hoping for. Okay. And with that, I can just change this to be modified task. That should pass our test. And it did not. Oh, of course it didn't. Did I never typed it in, right? Right. So edit input dot type modified task. Now it'll pass. There we go. Cool. So next, we want to see that it deletes a to-do. But actually, before we do, since we have one here, we might as well play with it, right? It doesn't really matter. But so in order to mark an incomplete to-do as complete here, well, we need to add a to-do again. So I'm going to go grab this again, and I'm actually going to delete some of these comments now, just because I don't want to have to do this over and over in the copy paste stuff. So I'm going to copy my whole adds a to-do test, which is a lot of duplication. And again, this can be refactored out later. I don't think I'm going to do that in this video. You are welcome to do that should you choose. Okay, so at this point, I want to assert that list contains random task. This should all pass. This is an already passing test. Now we want to actually mark it, and the way we're going to mark it is by grabbing the label. So this label is called, what did I call this? I think I called it to-do label. So side.get to-do label. And then we're going to double click it. Let's call this thing label. Say label dot double click. And then we can expect done to be there. So sci.get do label.done, we expect that to be there. And to prove it, I'm going to put like a 22 or something on it. Because obviously that 22 thing isn't going to be there. db click is not a function. Right, I misspelled it. dbl click. Okay, and here it cannot find to do label. Wait, what did it miss? I missed my class name. Let's try that again. There we go. And here we can see it is struck out, but this is not going to happen because done 22 is not there. So done 22, and actually I should be able to mark this as dot only, I think. There we go. That makes this much faster to work with. So now this test is finished, and basically I'm going to change this because all I have to do now is double click it again, right? And then assert that this thing is not there. Should not exist. This should be a passing test. And it is. So I'm just going to say toggles to dos. Toggles a to do, complete and incomplete. Normally you wouldn't put multiple tests together, but this one, I think it's trivial and I think it's not too bad. I think if something goes wrong here, it's easy enough to find it. Okay, so in the final one here, we just need to check for deleting to-dos. And here it, well, we need this, we have the same problem, right? We're going to start by visiting and adding one. We still have to add a to-do. And this is really pretty awful at this point. Maybe I will refactor it. Okay, so this should work. And we're going to need to then, oh, I have to take off the only from the other. We'll put the only on this one for now. That one should work. It does. And now we need the delete button. So const, what did I call the other one? Edit button. btn edit. So I'll call this one btn delete equals sci.get. And again, I put classes on here. Makes it nice. And then I'll say button delete click. And because there's only one in the list here, I can expect that empty list to be here. A bit hacky, but it should work. Yeah, so that's working. So now we can run all of them, and they all should work. There we go. So now we have some automated tests against our front end. Now, I think I am going to try and extract an actual function from this. And let's see if we can do anything with it. So from here, I'm going to pull it all the way out. I'm going to say function add to do. And this is going to take the global. I'm not sure if it needs to, but I'm going to do it just to be safe. So here, I'm going to say, I guess here we'll add it to do and we'll tell it which one also. Or maybe we don't care. Maybe I'll just take it all the way through. So I'm thinking all of this goes. Okay. That would mean this can now be add to do, just like that. Well, let's see why. So let's see if that works. Adds a to do does appear to work, which means just for the heck of it, let's see if we can do it without this. And we can. Okay, then, there we go. So that means all of this can go now. And that means that everywhere where I copied and pasted that, I can replace it with add to do. It should still work. Random task is not defined. Aha. So to do has to optionally take in, I guess, a to do. So here we'll say to do, and then I will say equals. If it's a to do, we're going to take that. Otherwise, we're just going to do this. Here, I'm just going to say const. This one. So I'm going to say const to do equals this. And this one here is going to be dot split. Oh, now we don't have list anymore. So we have to get list out. Assignment to a constant. Oh. Oh, yeah, we don't need this here. I can just do it here. There we go. Nice. Okay, so edit is done. Doesn't add a blank is done. Add is done. Shows empty list is done. So here we added a new one, right? So we're going to just say add to do. That gets rid of all of this. Okay. So this is toggle to do. That still works. And finally, we have delete. All of this can go. This is add to do. Side.click can only be on a single element. Okay. Oh, we have to visit the URL. So side.visit URL, because that's what resets it, right? Did I do that here too? I did that on all of them. Yeah. What I did here was I accidentally added 2 of them. Okay. So our integration testing is basically done right now. Let's do a commit. So I'm going to add everything here. I'm going to say this is test. Well, just say test. Implement. All right, let's run our yarn tests just to be sure. nothing should have changed. So Docker compose exec frontend bash yarn. And all tests are passing, which is great. Okay, so that concludes this video. And I think starting next time, we are on the back end.